Hello and welcome to Knit, Design, Edit, Sleep, Repeat with Lisa Conway, Denise Finley, and Tiffany Wooten. Let's listen in and see what's happening, who's happening, and what's new in their world.
Welcome. Today, Denise and Tiffany discuss the difference between tech editing and testing and when it's right to do just one or both.
Well, hello, Miss Denise, Sparkle Coordinator. How are you?
I am just fine, Miss Tiffany. How are you doing this evening?
Surviving Mercury in retrograde.
Yep. You and me both, sweetie. You and me both. Yeesh.
Yeah, so for those, I think everybody will have heard by this point, or Lisa's putting a preface up on our episode this time around. For our wonderful listeners, you get the Sparkle Coordinator and I today. Lisa is going to be out for an extended period due to her surgery, so please send her all the best wishes and best prayers and best vibes for a speedy and healthy recovery.
Indeed.
And a much less painful life post-op. So
Correct. Yeah.
So you get the two of us, and it's going to be a little different because it's the two of us. So, we had to take it in a different route. Because we're just, we're kooky and crazy, and Lisa keeps us grounded. So this without the grounding force here, we're going to have a little more fun.
Buckle up, Buttercup. It could be a bumpy ride.
That's it, exactly. So grab your seatbelts, people. We're going in. So today we're going to be talking about testing, project testing, whether it's going to be test knitting or crochet testing for your patterns versus tech editing versus both. And Denise and I have a lot of very strong feelings on all of this.
I don't know if they'll be able to tell or not. No.
I mean, not us. No, we don't. We're not. We're pretty. Yeah, we're pretty low key. Not at all.
Right.
So, anyways, that's what the broad topic's going to be. So, I think you and I talked a little bit earlier. All I've ever tested is crochet projects. I've done some garments. I've done some accessories. I've done some. I've tested probably about a year and a half. Most of the time now that I test, it's something small, something easy, something, break my funk, break my time up. So I don't get like super involved anymore. But I do enjoy test moderation because I get to watch all the testers and all their stuff. But
it's fun. Yeah.
It is. It's like I enjoy the community of that part, but I don't actively test much anymore. So,
well, my testing experience is about 10 to 15 years I've been testing. I've tested for some big names in the knitting field, and I've tested for some beginners, which is fun.
Yeah.
I've also most recently tested for an Italian designer, which was tons
I bet
of fun.
That was fun.
Oh my gosh, she is so great. Absolutely adore her. But it's always been in the knitting field. I knit and crochet and spin and do a lot of fiber related things. But I test knitted. I was in a couple of the knitting or the testing things on Ravelry for a while and got a lot of calls from that. Yeah.
Nice.
But then I started doing it just per designer, which you get a little bit more less selection, more say in it, I guess I should say, when you get to actually speak with the designer. So that's fun too.
Yeah. That's what I've always, all of my testing stuff has come off of Instagram. Because I'm one of the, I actually didn't get into the Ravelry scene real big. My mom did, and that's how she did her knitting, knit testing. But all of my testing's actually been done on Instagram. So mine has been directly from the designer's input and the designer asking for help. So I've been spoiled in that aspect of getting the direct input with the designer and, hey, this isn't so great. Hey, let's try this. And so you bringing that up, I've clearly been spoiled with that aspect.
Yeah, because I was several of the test pools that I was in from off of Ravelry. I was just one of 30 or 40,
Mm-hmm.
and didn't get a lot of one-on-one with the designer.
I
But
got
most
you.
recently, especially with the girl in Italy and with Lisa also,
Mm-hmm.
it was very one-on-one, and trying to figure out the best way for them as a designer to put
Mm-hmm.
their pattern out there for different people.
Yeah.
Because I think, as I've designed things myself, but never written it down and, created a pattern from it. So in
Right.
designing things that way, I've just done it for myself, and I've never had to think about what it would be like for somebody else to read that pattern.
Right.
So that was kind of an eye opener for me, to get that kind of feedback. So,
And see, that's what. So this is one of those things that I am going to, as a tech editor,
mhm.
I strongly. And I'm just going to put this out there now for all of the listeners, and anybody who has followed my page knows that I did a Tech Edit Tuesday several months ago where it was testing versus editing.
Mhm.
And I am very much team designer. I'm very much team, and in the end, team maker. So
Right.
for me, editing and testing have to go hand in hand for the pattern to be the absolute best that it can be. Because,
I agree.
like you said, it's I can understand the pattern as the editor,
Mhm.
and especially because, like we've talked with Ro, I've been friends with Ro for a very
Yep.
long time, so I understand what she's saying, and I can clarify some of her stuff to make it a little more clear.
Right.
But because we've been friends, I understand what she's saying. Well, this is where her
Correct.
testing pool comes in, and she's
Mhm.
got a test going on now. I think we talked about it in the interview with the new
I think
summer
so.
top.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, the
The summer
California
top.
Gold top. Yep,
Yeah.
she's got it's active in testing now,
I
and
saw
it's
that.
fun.
It's beautiful.
It's
Oh.
so cute. But anyways,
Oh.
like some people are already coming up and they're like, "Hey, I don't understand this," and
Right.
that's the whole point of testing is because
Yes.
you as a maker, me as a maker, if
Mhm.
if it's a designer I've never worked with,
Yep.
hey, this doesn't make sense,
Yeah. Even though it
and
made sense to you when you wrote it down as the designer, you have to
yep.
make it applicable to everybody.
Yep,
Which
and it
in
makes sense to me as an editor because I've got background, and then
right.
I've got the personal relationship. So that's two fronts right there where, yeah,
Correct.
I understand it. But
Mhm.
if a general maker, if another maker can't understand it, okay, we need to change this.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I agree with that 100%
Me
that,
too. I think because I've done a lot of testing
mhm.
in the knitwear field, and it was all mostly knitwear. I never tested like an Afghan or accessories or anything like that, shawls. But
When
like,
I say accessories, I did a sunglasses case instead of
oh
coasters.
yeah,
And the coasters were actually flowers, and
aw,
I have made them for so many people now. They are just
yeah,
they're quite literally one of my favorite things. But anyways.
aw, yeah. But because of that, I think that I've learned to, as a maker
Mhm.
myself, when I'm looking for something. Let me give you for instance.
Okay.
My granddaughter is expecting her first child. Let's not even talk about
Aw.
what that makes me. But
But
um,
baby makes are fun. We'll
I
we'll talk
know,
about
yeah,
baby makes being fun.
right.
We will not
But
talk about the lineage or the age, but we will
no,
talk about baby makes being fun.
exactly. They're so much fun. But I really wanted something that was easy, but I didn't want it
Mhm.
to look too simple, you know?
Okay.
And that was one of the things. But one of the things I decided to do a couple of years ago, and we're kind of segueing into something else now, but
Yeah.
I really have a strong opinion about using patterns that have been tech edited.
Okay.
If they've been tested, that's good. But if they haven't been tech edited, and I'm going to pay money for them, I almost find that to be problematic. Um, um, I I don't want to have to do all the work to figure it out in my head.
Yeah.
You know, and so if that can be taken care of prior to releasing that into the wild, for all the
Right.
people to buy,
Yeah, for the makers, yeah.
yeah, then I think that that's a very positive thing. I've also, if it doesn't say anywhere on their first, like their romance page or whatever, that
Mhm.
it's been tech edited, then I
Mhm.
have been known to email the designer and ask if it has been.
And that's a really good point is I think it needs to stay somewhere, whether it's going to be in the listing on either Ravelry or Etsy or
Right.
their website,
Uh-huh.
or on their romance page or whatever
Mhm.
it's going to end up being. I
Mhm.
agree with you. I think it needs to say off the top that
Yep.
that it has been tested and it has been edited,
Yep.
because it does for, makers like us who have come to expect a certain level.
Yes.
I agree with you that it does make it easier, because my mom, she was working a pattern in the last 4 or 5 months, and she was just like, this makes absolutely no sense, and she had to reach out
Yeah.
to the designer, and
Yep.
she didn't get a response from the designer.
For
So she
weeks
became,
sometimes.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, so she became very frustrated. And then, like,
Yes.
I opened a pattern recently that was sponsored. It was a sponsored pattern. This one really bothers me.
Uh,
I opened up a pattern in last year, loved the pattern, bought the pattern because
mhm.
I was so in love with this sweater. Bought the pattern, and it's a color block pattern.
Mhm.
So I was going to be my first color block project, because I
Right.
loved color, hadn't actually color blocked. So I was like, okay, this will be a good way for me to learn it, because I
Yeah.
love color, but I'm not so great at putting it together and putting
Right.
it in an order.
Mhm.
And I've got a couple people that I can be like, I can take a picture of my pile of yarn and the finished product and be like,
Right.
how do I order this? And my person that I typically go to, her name is Krista. She's with the Frosted Stitch, and let me tell you, that woman, she has got an amazing eye for color, and I think you would actually love her yarn.
Oh,
She's a
I love
Canadian.
color. Are you
She's a
kidding?
Canadian. She's a Canadian
Yeah.
maker and a Canadian dyer.
They've got the yarn down up there, let me
Let
tell
me
you.
tell you what,
I'm
you would love
serious.
her colors, because I know you love color. Like, she has got
Mhm.
color for days.
Yes.
And
She's
I've been
speaking
known
my
to,
song.
yeah, I have been known to take a picture of the pile and be like, Krista, what do I do? And Krista will tell me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but the color block, like, I opened up the pattern and it tells you color. I don't remember how they had it, whether it was color A, color B, or one, two, three,
Mhm.
whatever. It listed the colors and it gave you the yardages, but it did not tell you what color the samples were done. So, like, I
Uh-huh.
think this particular sample, I think it was gray, pink, purple, and blue, but it
Right.
did not denote which color
Which was
which
A, which
was
was
yardage.
B?
Correct. So
Ah!
I could not personally go in and substitute the way that I wanted to. And I was
Yeah, I know what
like,
you're saying. Yeah.
I don't have the mental space to figure this out right now.
No.
And
Well,
I was
it,
livid. My friends got a whole rant about it.
well, and
Because
here's
to me, that's an easy thing to do,
it
you know?
is. And this is going to sound very ungracious or picky or I don't know, something. Um, but if I'm going to spend money on something,
Hmm.
I'm going to want it already figured out for me as far
Correct.
as what kind of yardage it needs to have for this size,
Yep.
or, where do I need to put those increases or decreases,
Right.
or, what kind of yarn substitutions can I make
Right.
that are acceptable? Because it's not always on the Ravelry page.
Mm-mm.
When it says yarn ideas, it's
Hmm.
just the people who have actually used those yarns. It's not
Right.
like the designers, what she said, oh, you could probably use this, you
Right.
know? So I just feel like for a paid pattern
Hmm.
that there needs to be maybe a little bit more work to it, or a
So
little bit more into it, you know?
so let me ask you, as a maker,
Mhm.
will you pay more for a pattern that has been edited and tested?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
In a
I know
heartbeat.
that's been a debate. I know that's been a debate in some circles that I have seen over the last
Wow.
couple of years.
Wow.
And because some people are, because they're trying to figure out what to charge.
Yeah.
And that's one of the top two questions. And I'm like, well, obviously you're either having it edited by me, or have you had it edited? Yes, no, okay. Have you had
Right.
it tested? Yes, I have had it tested. Okay,
Right.
cool. Rock on with your bad self. And yes,
Exactly.
you have leeway to charge more, because
And
that's time and effort, and that's more edits,
yes. Now if
from the testers.
there's a pattern that's maybe simpler,
Hmm.
maybe more advanced beginner, to not necessarily intermediate advanced or anything, okay?
Right.
I'm just throwing that terminology out there. I don't usually use it. But
Yeah.
then if it's just been tested and I've already made a cardigan that's shaped that way,
Hmm.
then I might be able to go with it's only just been tested,
Right.
because there have been other people giving that designer feedback. Okay.
Right.
But if it's something that's extremely difficult or Fair Isle or color stranded or, fitted, it's got a lot of, stuff in it that, or maybe
Darts
techniques I
and
haven't used before,
right.
then I'm really going to make sure that it has not only been tested, but that it has been tech edited, because with the more advanced procedures that we tend to do in our
Right.
crafting, we need a lot more eyes on it to make sure that we've explained it correctly.
And that's fair, because you're right. Like, the more advanced you get, the harder it can be. Number
Mm-hmm.
one, to not only make sure that it's clear, but number two, to
Yes.
explain it,
Yes.
to make sure that every maker can do it.
And can I say something right here? I love YouTube.
Mhm.
I love technology some days. Not today.
I mean, look, not today, but we've had our
Not
days.
Today. And I
Mercury.
love
We're
the
going
fact
back to
that
the
it's-
Mercury thing.
Right. And I
Y'all,
love the
Denise
fact-
and I decided we were blaming Mercury for all of our problems.
Everything today.
Just so you know, today's a Mercury in retrograde, and while
and
I'm not a full
cuss.
believer, while I'm not a full believer, I enjoy being able to blame it. So, anyways,
Oh, I am a full believer, and I totally believe. But anyway, so here's the thing. Here's the thing. I forgot what I was going to say.
We were talking about the Fair Isle. We were talking about the clarity and putting it out there, and yep. I lost
technology.
You too.
Okay,
there you go. Technology. Yes.
Here we go. Please delete this. Feel free to delete that part. Okay, so here's the thing: is not everyone enjoys technology like I do. And I'm an older person, and my boys keep me up to date on technology, and I'm pretty savvy with stuff, but nowhere near as savvy as you are, sweetie, okay? Or even Lisa. I'm kind of in the dark with all that, okay? But if I have to pull up my pattern and click on a YouTube link every time I want a very difficult procedure to explain to me, I'm going to throw things, okay? I'm going to throw them at a wall. But if I have a shot-by-shot tutorial, like stills, photo stills, that's wonderful. And I think that a lot of designers of a certain age right now that are very popular, that are prolific, tend to think that way, and it's just all video links.
And it's funny because I actually encourage both photos and links, because everybody's got a different way of learning, and everybody's got a different way of figuring it out.
Yes.
And I'm somewhere in the middle. Like, sometimes if I can't figure it out on the video, I want to have a photo that I can look at it and be like, okay, where does this hook need to go to make the stitch?
And I want words. I want words that say, place your hook under the second loop, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
The third
I don't
stitch
just want a
where
picture.
Your hook is sitting.
Because I can tell you right now, I made a cardigan off of a YouTube video, which is still sitting in a bag, not done yet, because I was furious about it. But
it's in timeout. It's fine.
It is in timeout. Yes, it's still in timeout. But I literally took I can't tell you how many times I backtracked that the video to a certain point to find out exactly what stitch that she was doing that on.
Yeah.
Because she would speak too quickly, or she would,
the voice and video don't line up right.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and maybe that's just someone of much finer vintage than, others that think that way. But
I think part of it is a learning thing. I don't know that it's necessarily an age thing. I think it's a learning thing, because
I do too.
I've gotten to the point that I'm very picky with my YouTube videos on who I actually trust to link out to. And because I'm a baby knitter. Baby Knitter has like 2 people that I will go and watch religiously. If Baby Knitter doesn't know what I'm doing, I'm like, okay, where's Pink Lady? I need a Pink Lady video to show me how to do this.
She's great. She's great.
Oh, she's amazing. I love her. I love her stuff. So Baby Knitter loves. Yeah, and that's what I've been relying. When Lisa and I did our interview last time, we were talking about a tank top I was working on. And one of the things was slip knit. And let me tell you what, I watched her slow-mo slip knit about 4 times because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Because, here's the thing. Here's my philosophy about it. A lot of the YouTube videos for me is just replacing the going and sitting in the knit group and somebody showing you in person how to do it.
Very
And they're
much.
going to do it slower, or they're going to sit right next to you, or they're going to
Yeah.
talk to you real slow while you're doing it if you're a
Yep.
beginner.
And they'll
Oh,
show you how to fix it, and they'll show you
exactly.
exactly what you're doing wrong, right?
Because
And it makes it harder.
Go ahead.
No, it makes it harder when you replace the video with the actual person, is what I was saying.
Yeah. Well, and I've even clicked on beginner videos for a certain set of stitches, or like cabling without a needle and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm sorry, but that just isn't even going to work for me because it's way too fast. And I know I can slow my video down, but then it doesn't match, like you said.
Yeah.
So I think designers specifically of that have wide ranging
makers.
Yes.
Audiences.
I think that they need to, I think they need to really think about that when they're doing their, because word will get around if this is a good enough pattern for somebody to do, or if this is a good pattern for a beginner, or is this a good pattern for somebody learning this new technique, you know?
Yeah. And it makes it easier. And I think you're right. The feedback, the word does spread of, oh my, when they start putting out stuff of, hey, who's a really good, I need a pattern for this, or who's got a really great pattern of this. And,
right.
If you get the same thing 6 times, it's a legit deal. So,
right. So as a maker then for yourself, I'm going to read one of your questions you sent me. Why do you think it would be important for your pattern that you're going to use to be tested or tech edited? I've already said what I said.
Right.
Or both.
I'm like I said, I'm very much team both, because there's certain stuff that I don't understand. If it's somebody I don't know, I want to make sure that it's clear, and the tech editor is going to make sure that you're technically correct, and they're going to hit the first round of, hey, clarify this, condense this, whatever. But having the makers go through as the second check and be like, this doesn't make sense. And I've been in enough chats, and I guess this is the difference between Ravelry and like Instagram is, I was one of, 25, but we also did have that direct input with the designer where we're like, hey, this doesn't make sense. And a lot of the designers have been super receptive to, hey, how do we make, the designer will be like, okay, anybody have ideas how to clarify? And to me, the more trustworthy eyes you can put it in front of, and I say trustworthy because there's some testers that are not trustworthy. There are some testers that are not, and everybody's got their people they trust, everybody's got their people, I think you need to be inclusive in grabbing a tester pool between number 1, experience, and number 2, different backgrounds.
Yeah.
So I just think the more eyes you can get it in front of, the better. And I'm like you, I will pay more for a pattern to know that it's been tech edited and to know that it's been tested, especially like you said, with the more advanced techniques, whether it's going to be color or stitches or whatever. And if you know what it's going to be, I'm with you. I want to know off the top whether it's going to be tech edited and or tested or both. Because like I said, I think the more eyes you can get it in front of, the better. And it's like you and I, when we were talking about what we were doing for this, it's like the old fashioned, but the older quilting circles and the, the knitting circles and that. It's exactly like that, where everybody comes together to help on the finished product.
Exactly.
I think the finished product is better for it.
And
between editing. It does. And between having, so I don't know how other designers do it. I do round 1 where I edit the pattern, and then it goes out for testing, and then it comes back to me, and I do a final look through before it goes out for publication, so that, everybody's on the same page, everything looks good, and some of those patterns have come back, and I'm just like, wow, that is so much better than what you and I worked through to begin with. And this is going to be amazing. And I'm so proud of you and your team, because it is a huge collaborative team. And I'm very much put it in front of as many eyes as you can get it, realistically.
Quick question right here in the middle. How long do you think you need to give, let's just say shawl, okay? Lace shawl. How long do you give a tester? Do you think is a good amount of time?
Timelines are a very sticky thing.
Mm-hmm.
So complex lace, I would say probably anywhere between 6 and 12 weeks. It depends on if it's fingering weight, if it's worsted weight, if it's,
Really? Okay.
well, and like if it's going to be all lace, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
just a straight up lace,
Mm-hmm.
if it's a super complicated lace.
Mm-hmm.
If it's the more complicated, I think you need to have a longer window. If it's just a
Mm-hmm.
simple, slip knit, knit two together kind of
Right,
thing,
right. Yeah, like a horseshoe or
you could,
something. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, you could
Mm-hmm.
probably, if it's just a small little, 3 by 3 square kind of thing,
Yeah,
yeah, you could probably get away with, a 4 to 6 week window,
right.
especially if it's a thicker yarn. But
Mm-hmm.
especially garments,
Yeah.
I firmly believe minimum of 8 to 10 weeks for a garment.
So is this minimum that you're talking about, whether it's a garment or a shawl or lace or whatever, are these time frames that you're giving me industry wide?
No, not even close.
Okay.
These are my personal preferences as number one, as a plus size maker.
Uh-huh.
And number two, what I have seen have been more receptive to
Mm-hmm.
the testing area.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are trying to turn out a garment that is full, like, and it's lace around the neck and lace down the sleeves and lace down the, the hemline, and you've got
Mm-hmm.
lace everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You want somebody to turn that in, a plus size 2X maker to turn that in 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't take into account that they have a full-time job. That doesn't take into
Right.
account if they have kids. That doesn't take into account if they have both.
Right.
Yeah,
I know.
it doesn't
Right.
take into account if they have, speaking to our world, chronic
Mm-hmm.
illness where
Mm-hmm.
we just have days we can't even pick up a hook or yarn.
Right.
Yep. So I am one that I lean more on the more fair windows that take into account life.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and this is test windows is a hot topic in the Instagram community as far as what's fair and what's not.
Well, so here's my thinking, because I've
Mhm.
come from the fashion world. I'm kind of like Jill Wolcott a little bit. I come
Okay.
from the world of fashion, not as
Okay.
a maker, but I was a model for a lot of years, and my mom was a designer. So
Okay.
that's my mindset. But they were
Right.
always a season or 2 seasons ahead,
Correct.
And I think for a long time, we in the fiber world we've been, oh, what's coming up next month? You've got 3 weeks
Yeah.
to test this.
Yeah.
And I've lived
And
that. And
yeah.
I don't think that it's
There's been a transition with the makers that I know where they are trying to at least get a season ahead.
Okay, good.
Because
Good.
I have seen that as well, where it's like, oh wait, okay, so when we're recording this, it's the beginning of June, so wait, 4th of July is in a month. We should
Right.
probably do something for 4th of July.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I know that this episode is going to come out after 4th of July, but that's where we're recording right now. Of,
Mhm.
oh wait, this is the next holiday, we should do something targeted for that.
Right.
And it makes it hard on the makers and the testers where
It
you're
does.
trying to turn out something that doesn't, it's just, you're going to take all the fun out of making.
Yes.
And you're going to take the fun out of testing, and you're going to take it's just not going to be a thing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay, good. Well, I'm glad to hear it, because when I was with a bunch of testing, when I did my earlier testing, like 15 years ago, when I started, I would get 3 weeks for a lace shawl, and I had a small child who I was homeschooling with learning difficulties and a lot of Asperger's and stuff. So it was pretty time intensive,
Yeah. And that's what I know a lot
that's
of the
why I don't do it anymore.
Yeah. It's a huge thing. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is I've become a lot more selective on my timelines. And I know a lot of makers, especially the plus size makers, they're the same way. They're very selective on their timelines. So me as an editor, if somebody asks me, hey, you just looked at this shawl, what do you think? And depending on how complex it is, I'm going to be like, you need 6 weeks, or you need at least 10, and somebody will try and argue with me. And I'm like, what about your plus size makers? Because as a plus size maker, I want to see it on a plus size body. I want to see their photos.
Me too.
So you want to give them fair time to be able to make it, because it's twice as big, 3 times as big as a small, extra small. Exactly. And yes, they can pump it out in 4 weeks or, shorter, but I can't. I'm a slow stitcher.
Well, I'm just really glad to hear that the industry itself is kind of trying to look at this part of its little gambit and seeing that it needs to be seen at least a season ahead.
Yeah.
In
A
order
lot
for
of
them
people
to
are
be
starting to think, a lot
successful.
of people are starting to transition to a season
Good.
ahead, and it's working. It seems to be working out for them a lot better. And so they are able to offer the longer timelines to help with their makers and their testers. So that's one thing
Well,
I've become really proud of.
so this was you wrote this down, and this is interesting for me because I don't know if it's the same thing as for you as it was for me. But as a
Hmm.
tester, what do you look for in the pattern to help the designer?
Hmm.
What do you look for?
So because I've got the editor background, I look more for the technical stuff.
Oh, okay.
But and that's just me. That's just what I tend to. I'm like, hey, this doesn't quite make sense. First I'm going to look for whatever it is I'm going to use or I like.
Hmm.
The coasters are flowers, and I'm not a big floral person, but I
Right.
loved how big they were. And I
Aw.
loved the fact that it was an easy pop of color. And
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that'll be a fast project. Sure
Right.
enough,
Right.
it was. And I popped out like a dozen in a weekend. It was great.
That's cool.
Um, yeah, for a garment, it's going to be something that I can wear, and it can go
Yeah.
into this capsule wardrobe I'm trying to build.
Hmm.
So,
I used to teach capsule wardrobing. I know what you're talking about.
oh, I'm gonna have to hit you up because I need some more help. But
Yeah.
anyways,
Yeah.
I it's first I look for something that I can make,
Hmm.
something that I'm going to wear, and then I look for that timeline because I want to be able to make sure that I'm not going to kill myself over a timeline anymore. I did it, and I unfortunately disappointed a few designers because
Yeah.
between my job and my life,
Yep. Yep.
it just didn't happen. And so I try to make sure that I'm fair to both of us
Yes.
on getting a timeline that's going to be more realistic to me.
Right.
And then when I get into the pattern,
Sorry for the echo, guys. Tiffany's earbuds died.
I guess one of the things I thought of when I read this question at first was what can I do to help the designer?
mm-hmm,
And I think it's my point, especially when I did Lisa's, the
mm-hmm,
shawl, was to try to get her out of her own head and into somebody else's way of thinking, like, okay, this makes sense to you, like we talked about earlier, but for me, this is mud.
yes. And that's
So,
one of those things where you get it in front of many eyes as possible. And
right.
yeah, I'm the same way
Okay.
because there was one project that I did that I was just like, this doesn't make sense. I am not a beginner. I have done several different things,
Right.
but this doesn't make any sense to me. So we need to figure this out.
Right.
And it
Right.
actually, the designer and I actually ended up doing a video call on something, and we sorted it out, and everybody was like, "Oh yeah, so much better." So,
Yay.
as a tester and a tech editor, I want to encourage everybody. If you are testing, don't be afraid to say something to the designers so that they can clarify it.
Yes.
Because it has to be clear,
Mhm.
for everybody. If you're not understanding it, chances are there's 5 other people in that group who don't understand it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I'm not the only one. I learned that a long time ago.
exactly, mark that up exponentially once it gets out into the wild, like you said, and there's several other people. I agree that once you get it in front of as many people, you're not the only one that doesn't understand. And once it gets
Mhm.
out into the wild, somebody else has to be able to understand it. So
Yes, lots of somebody else's that think differently than we do,
we all think differently, and that's the fun of it, is we all have different perspectives, and we have to be able to bring our perspectives to the
So, let me ask you
world.
this as an editor, because I'm not a
Mhm.
tech editor. I've
Right.
just done testing forever, and I'm a maker. And I design bespoke, one of a kind things. I
Right.
don't write them as a pattern.
Okay.
So, what do you look for that differs from testing?
So this is one of those things, consistency. For me, it's a huge thing is consistency. Like, I want to make sure that if you use capital,
Oh,
like if you're going to use a capital SC for single crochet,
yes. Mhm.
you use the same single crochet all the way through.
Okay.
Or if you're going to use lowercase, you use lowercase all the way through, and making
Mhm.
sure that the asterisks and the parentheses are all where they're supposed to be. And, you're saying there's a repeat here, but you haven't marked a repeat anywhere in this row. You need to be able to
Mhm.
mark a repeat,
Right.
or, hey, try changing this to repeat row, whatever, like it's
Right.
consistency is one of my huge things, is to make sure that everything matches all the way through so that it doesn't confuse somebody, because somebody may look at a capital SC up here and a lowercase SC down here, and they may go, oh my God, is that two different things? No, it's not two different things. It's just the way that it got marked.
Yeah.
So that's one of those. I look more for the consistency aspect and making sure that repeats are marked correctly. Repeats are actually being used correctly, the math, because like you said, if it's a fitted garment, you want to make sure it fits correctly. So we have to make sure that all the math that works out correctly. I don't do grading like Lisa does. So Lisa would have a whole different perspective as far as the grading process.
Yes.
I just do final checks on the numbers and make sure that the number counts work and that kind of thing. So mine is probably my biggest pet peeve would be consistency.
Yeah. And I have a problem with that a lot of my life, but not in pattern stuff.
Right.
I think I really, there have been some patterns in my life that I've had in the past, and even as recent as like last year, that the consistency was, and they were free patterns, to be honest. Okay. There's a period in my life when I couldn't afford to buy a lot of patterns. So I would get free patterns. And there are times when you're just thinking, why is this different up here? Now, let me ask you a question as an editor. Would having a glossary at the beginning of, like a glossary of terminology at the beginning of a pattern, would that be helpful?
I find that having the abbreviations listed at the front is essential, because if somebody, especially if it's an adventurous maker, they may not know what all the terms are, and like you were saying earlier, yes, Google and YouTube are wonderful, but you want to make sure that as a designer, speaking to the designers, you want to make sure that you're listing it there so that your makers know what they're getting into, because some of these designers are getting very creative with their stitches.
Yes.
And they're pulling, they're almost creating new stitches. So, okay, if you're going to create something new, then you need to be able to list it appropriately, and nobody's going to know what that abbreviation is going to be. So you need to list what it is so that they know how to make it.
Well, and not even just abbreviations for stitches, but different techniques. I've noticed there is one particular knit designer recently who does a lot of garments. And it's like, it is her mission in life to make things as most difficult as she can to start the garment. And I'm thinking, and I have also remember a person in my life at one time has said, hang on, I'm going to plug my computer, has said, well, a pattern is just basically a suggestion. Well, you're talking to a pattern follower.
Yeah, I'm a follower too. I'm very much a follower.
Every jot and tittle. You know what I'm saying? That's me.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah. So I don't do the whole, this is a suggestion and go ahead and start it differently than what the pattern says. I can't do that.
Yeah, I can't either. I'm not that person either. I'm very much follow it. And that's one of those things that if, I'm an advocate for the special stitches section. Spell out what this stitch is. And that's where we go back to the photos and the links and everything else is, okay, here's your section, here's how you do, I'm trying to think of one of the stitches recently was I don't even know. I can't think of it. I can see the abbreviation and I can't think what it was called. But anyways, it was a treble stitch, and here's what the name of the stitch is. Here's the abbreviation I'm going to be using. Here is the verbiage how to do it. Here are the pictures and here's the link on how to do it. Like to me, that is a complete section, because number one, that covers what the stitch is, that covers what the abbreviation is, that covers for those who read it and need the words and the photo. Here's your words, here's your photo. And for those who need the video, here's your video. To me, that is a complete section. And that makes it all the more accessible for everybody. And it sets the expectation of what you as a designer want the stitch to be. Yes, because like you said, there are some designers who see this as a suggestion. Right. But
if you want your piece to match the sample,
To look like it. Exactly.
bingo.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how you do this. Here's what I need. And
right.
I had a thing not long ago. Well, I guess it was the beginning of the year where I put out one of the first things that you need as a designer for writing a pattern. You need to set your expectations. Setting your expectation is what stitches are used. What's, how do you create the same stitches that I used in the design? Here's the yarn I used. Here's some substitutions. You need to set all of your expectations up front, and here the special stitches and spelling it out is one of those things.
So there's a crochet designer right now that I follow almost religiously. I love her stuff. It's all very simple, but she does exactly what you say. Now, I don't recall in any of her patterns if she says that they have been tech edited, but I will pay for them. Now, she has them free on her blog, but then you can get the no ads, PDF thing that you pay for. And I don't mind doing that because I've done enough of her patterns. I know that she has that. She has a video tutorial. She has pictures. I know I can go to her blog and look at her stitch definitions. But the knitwear designer I was referring to, and let me ask you this question. So she's got this way to start these cardigans at the very beginning that the shoulder slope is really odd and you cast on and uncast off and blah, 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 all this other stuff. But she's done it in 2 or 3 of the patterns that I've purchased of hers. Should she not just call this the whatever her name is technique?
She could. I mean, Lisa would have a better answer on that. I mean, she could, but me personally, I would prefer her to spell it out every time, because if you don't have experience with her to know that that is her technique, and if she doesn't consistently spell it out in her special section, special stitches section, if she's not one to use that, then I would prefer her to write it out every time.
Well, but what I'm saying is, should she not just present that in a video? This is my technique to start these,
She could, but it's a matter of if she would. Or, if she does. So that would be her personal preference. If she just wants to keep writing it out, she could. If she wants to actually call it her own technique, she would have to make sure that she's consistent on the usage of it. But
that's interesting.
Because if she's not consistent each pattern, like if it's 10 stitches on this pattern and 5 stitches on this pattern,
right.
I would prefer it be spelled out every time.
Yeah, I get it. So, that makes more sense to me now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just very frustrated.
Oh, I can understand that, but I would prefer it be spelled out every time so that there's no gray area, because like you said, I'm a follower. I'm the same way.
Yeah,
and
I am.
If, and I'm also one that I would rather have everything listed on the pattern and then have to go back and look at something else and be like,
oh, definitely. Me too. Yeah.
And if the link is there, then I'll follow the link. But I don't want to have to go back and look, hey, go find this blog post or go find this pattern.
Right.
And I'm also an advocate of linking everything out in the PDF, because if there's a link there, I'll follow it. But if I have to go find it, I'm not going to do it.
No, me either.
I'm lazy.
And well, I'm pretty lazy, but I also like the old-fashioned way of printing out on real actual paper instead of doing it on my tablet or my computer. So
half the time
if the link is
half
there,
the time I do it electronically. So yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one more question for you as the editor, my dear, is do you actually have to make the piece the way the testers do?
No.
I didn't think so. Okay.
No, I don't actually. Like, now there are pieces that I have started that I have edited because I love them so much that they're such an amazing piece that I will make it. But do I have to make it on the same timeline? Absolutely not. No, that's where I find, pull your mic down just a little bit because you're breathing into it. You can get it by your mouth. Yeah, you had it up high enough. It was catching your breath through your nose.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Okay. No, I don't have to make it on the same timeline. And this is where I find, as an editor, I love having the testers, because they do make the piece. So they can go back and not only double check my numbers, they can double check the designer's numbers. They can double check the fit. Because while I can look at it on the paper and I can look at the numbers and everything fits by the numbers, okay, great. But as an actual maker, does this fit the way that we all anticipate it fitting? Are the numbers, yes, mathematically these numbers fit, but as a maker, are they working to make the piece the way that we want it all to fit? Because sometimes numbers and execution, yeah, the numbers are right, but the execution, maybe we need to take it in 3 stitches and we didn't realize that. Or maybe, the decrease needs to come down 3 rows or something
Right.
like that. And that's, to me, that's where that's the other portion of the testers being absolutely essential, is because they do make the piece. So the designer's made the piece, the designer has made the sample, and most of, they have frogged so many times to make it fit perfectly.
Right.
Now all of your testers are starting from scratch, and they are trying to make your sample exactly the way that it needs to be made. And to me, that's where they're invaluable, is because now they're starting from scratch, and okay, where do we need to fix this as we go? And I find testers to be completely invaluable. And if somebody asks me, do I need to have this edited? 9 times out of 10, I'm going to tell them yes. Or have this tested. Have this tested. 9 times out of 10, I'm going to tell them yes.
Yeah, definitely. There have been, like I said, there were times 15 years ago when I was doing this and it wasn't a thing as much. And I don't even know if tech editing, I'm pretty sure it existed, but I don't think many people did it.
Yeah, I think it was probably more in the magazine industry, yarn industry kind of thing, than the actual
independent
independent, the independent realm like it is now, because technology's come a long way in 15 years, and even from Ravelry, it's come a long way in 15 years.
Oh, heavens, yeah.
There are tech editors that are available on an independent basis, like Lisa and I, and we can help the independent designers more accessibly.
I read an interesting book one time about fashion design and how the fashion designers themselves have actual tech editors. Because then when it goes to the cut people and all that, they have to know what to do, and it has to be precise.
And that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen in the realm not long ago that there's actually tech editors for a lot of different industries, science and math and, anywhere where you're putting anything down for people in the wild. There's typically a tech editor of some form to be able to go back and make sure that everything is correct and everything is on par.
Yeah. I appreciate the tech editors especially, and the testers, because when I buy a pattern, I'm confident, if I know that it's been tech edited and tested, I am confident that I will have a, not necessarily restful, but a happy experience.
Yes.
Even if I'm learning, even if it's something I haven't ever attempted before.
Yes. And even if you do get frustrated, it's because you're learning. It's not necessarily because of the pattern.
Yes. It's
and that's,
the maker.
And that's a valid, that's a valid thing right there, where, we are doing, it does relieve stress as a maker, because I'm the same way. If I'm buying a pattern, I would like to know that it makes sense. I would like to know that it, it has been tested, and, it does meet the standards of what the designer wants it to look like and do. And I want to make sure that it is going to fit me as a plus size, and unfortunately finding some plus size makers is hard, or plus size testers can be hard.
Really?
Yeah.
I wonder why.
Especially with the timeline, between the timeline and then the cost of yarn,
the amount of yarn.
Because you figure we've got to use how much yarn to, I'm at least 1,600 yards for a crocheted sweater.
Oh, girlfriend, I am at least that and more.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I'm tall on top of big.
Yeah, I'm not tall. I'm tall-ish, but I'm like fairly proportioned.
No, I'm not.
But I do make my stuffs longer. I usually have to use about 2,000 yards for a crocheted sweater.
Yeah, when they talk about a sweater
I make them
amount,
longer.
Yeah. I want them to cover that spot that I don't want anybody to look at. No.
Yep, I want to be able to bend over, squat down and not have my have that gap between my jeans and my sweater, because it aggravates the snot out of me. But yeah.
Here's a silly question I just thought of. Spitballing out here.
Yeah.
Do you think that this will ever become standard?
I would love for it to. But I think there's some people in the industry who they don't think it needs to be, or they think that, they can't afford it. Whereas, I can't speak for Lisa, but if somebody wants to work with me, we'll figure it out.
Right.
I'm lucky that this is not my primary income.
Right.
So I have a lot of leeway because this is not my primary income.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody wants to figure out how to barter something, we can figure it out.
Oh, yeah,
I think accessibility unfortunately prevents the editing portion. As far as the testing portion, I don't know. A lot of people are more willing to have it tested than tech edited, but some
Right.
people will just go straight for tech editing and then be done. And you can go either way, but I'm always team both.
I agree.
I always think it needs to be. I think it's more complete, and I think it's more universal and more accessible if it goes through both.
Because in my way of thinking, which is not like anybody else's usually, it's like you're getting the best of both worlds.
Exactly.
You're getting the tech world,
100%,
and then you're getting the real world. Which I mean, I know the tech world's a real world, but you know what I'm saying.
But you get the maker who's actually going to be making the pattern in the end, and you want their input of, hey, does this make sense? Hey, is this okay? Can you, as an adventurous beginner, or you as an experienced maker, understand what I'm saying right here of yarning over twice, insert your hook, pull up a loop and pull through all three, kind of thing. So, I agree with you 1,000% that you get the best of both worlds. And that's, to me, why it's so important to do both.
I do too. Now, that being said, just briefly, let's touch on different nationalities, cultures, that type of thing.
Okay.
That's always going to be different. But I know when we did talk to Ro, she mentioned how that she writes her patterns in English, in American English, because it doesn't translate well from her language.
Correct. Yeah, she writes her patterns actually in US terminology, and then she uses British English. So it's really British funny English, she writes it, her actual writing, like the actual physical writing, is British English, and then she uses US terminology for her abbreviations.
Just the patterns. Oh,
correct.
Okay.
So, and that cross is entertaining to me. And then, like I've mentioned before, I have an Irish designer, and she will actually use both. She uses both the UK and the US terminology, and then she writes in British English.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. I love the accessibility of listing both.
Yes.
As far as other designers, I know that there are one of the makers and I are trying to put together like a translation list for being able to translate in and out of different languages. And I know Lisa does, what did she say? She's got a Spanish, I think she said she's got a Spanish designer or something that she goes back. I know she's got an international designer that she goes through and corrects and translates or whatever. But,
well, I know when I was working with my Italian designer, she was strictly American that she wrote her patterns in.
Yeah.
And she was bilingual, of course.
And that's a preference. Some people, they do it as a, because like Ro, most of her following is US, UK based. And, for me in crochet, that's also why you have to differentiate what terminology you're using. Because
that makes sense.
If you're doing the international thing, you have to differentiate. That way everybody knows what stuff they're supposed to learn. Or supposed to use, not learn, use.
Because I can imagine something technical like knit or crochet would be way more difficult to translate than like my books. I can have them translated into several different languages.
Yeah, fairly easily.
Words. It's just words.
Yeah, it's words, and the grammar is easy enough to change around and that kind of thing.
Right, but I can't imagine the other. That's just crazy.
It would depend. I don't have a lot of experience with it, but I would imagine that it would be a little more difficult because breaking it down into the yarn over and that kind of thing, and the linked treble crochet. That's what I was trying to think of earlier. Trying to describe a linked treble crochet in, Dutch or German would probably be very different than what we do in the US or UK.
Right.
So, yeah, you would definitely need a tech editor in that language to make sure that it was correct.
Right. Well, so what else do you got to tell us about this, Missy?
I don't know that there's a whole lot left as far as like this little hour that we're taking, but I do very much advocate for both. I advocate for editing and testing, and
Do you know pretty much like the percentage of people who do advocate for both? Is it a small amount or a large or?
I really don't. I think, like I said, I think part of it is an accessibility thing, as far as getting with editors to have their stuff edited because they think they can't afford it. As far as testing or not testing, that might just be a time thing, or a, hey, I don't interact well with large groups kind of thing.
Mm,
But that's where you can ask somebody to help you out as a moderator.
right.
I don't, because there's a lot of designers or a lot of makers who are really good with the social thing, and they'll, you talk to them, they could probably help you sort out because there's a lot of introverts. That's one thing
Yeah.
that our craft is really good with is introverts.
Yes,
Hey,
definitely.
I don't have to talk to anybody. I can make my own shirt and be done with it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
if you want to design and the social, if it's the social aspect that's holding you back on having your stuff tested, I would say either find an extroverted friend who's really good with people that can help you with the groups, or find, maybe ask your tech editor, or ask, I can point you to a couple of different people who would be willing to do it. But, I would say,
Well,
see if you can find
honestly,
somebody to support.
I can tell you right now that I had never heard of a moderator for testing until you mentioned it.
There's not a lot of people who do it. That was one of those things that I started doing because I missed the social aspect of testing. Being
Hmm.
an editor, I missed that part. Like I enjoy testing, I don't have the time for it.
Right.
So being a moderator, I still get the social aspect. I still get the interaction. I get to help make the pattern better.
Hmm.
And, seeing how I love watching the creation from the designer's brain to how it comes out, to the sample, to where it
Hmm.
comes to me, then going through the testing process and then coming back to me. I
Hmm.
love that whole journey. Like that brings me so much
I
joy
bet. Yeah.
watching the little seedling grow. It's just, to
Aw.
me, it's so much fun. And so that was how I got back into the testing thing without actually doing testing, but I still
Well,
get to see it grow and I still get to interact.
so maybe there's some listeners out there that might be interested in doing something like
They
what you
very well
do.
could. And if
And
that's
how does
something
that, how do you do that?
that was something that I just started advertising. Well, honestly, when I started doing because I had some friends that were, when I was doing my little, I wasn't quite official with tech editing, but I was helping out kind of thing.
Hmm.
um, I was their unofficial second in the chat. And if somebody had questions, I'd pop up and say, hey, this is what it is, and I would clarify the question, or, hey, can you flag that on the pattern for her to come back to later kind of thing. And
Hmm.
that's really all it is it's just being unofficial seconds, or if you're actually the moderator, you're being an official second. And if somebody wants to do that, I say, do it. And I would be happy to, help them figure out what to do, or, happy to point people in that direction, because I've had two other editors and another maker reach out to me and say, hey, how do you do this? What do you do? And I, kind of word vomit all over them, unfortunately, because I love it, and I think it's necessary for the designer because it takes stress off of them. There's been
Hmm.
one designer I've worked with that I moderated two of her chats last summer because she was so overwhelmed with life, she couldn't handle the chats. So I jumped up in there and I helped her with her chats, and her patterns were all the better for it.
I bet. Yeah.
So the makers get the responses that they need on the
Hmm.
pattern.
Hmm.
It takes some of the stress off of the designer for being solely responsible for responding to everything.
Hmm.
And if the designer is overwhelmed with what's going on in the chat, then I pop out on an external chat with just the designer and I'm like, hey, person ABC has a question about this.
Right.
Tell me and I'll relay it. And I've done that, because they're like, hey, I'm taking a break for the weekend. I'm not doing anything. But if it's
Hmm.
something critical, I pop out independently and I'm like, hey, help me.
Yeah.
Explain this to me and I will relay. And that's what it actually worked out really great for her. And
Oh, it
I
makes a lot
think
of sense to me. That makes a lot of sense.
I think there's a lot of people who could do it, and I think there's a lot of people who would be really good at it. They've just never thought of, like you said, they've never thought of doing it.
No, no.
And
Yeah.
I, like I said, one of the makers that reached out to me a couple months ago, she was like, "Hey, this designer I work with a lot has asked me to do this. How do you go
Oh,
about it?" I'm like, "This is what I did."
oh,
I've
that's
had a
cool.
couple of other tech editors that they're like, "Hey, designer, some of my clients are asking me, and I'm like, this is what I do. One of the virtual assistants that I've talked to, she was figuring it out on her own, and we talked, kind of touched on it, and we do it very similarly. But that was one of her responsibilities as she got hired. Me is just a completely separate thing. So,
Right.
But I think there are a lot of people that could do it.
I think there are a lot of people that could find their way as an advocate or an intermediary for different positions in life all over the place. And I just never thought of applying it to this.
Yeah. But I mean, and it was funny because I put it up. Where was it? It was somewhere. And one of the designers that I moderate for, there was a designer that popped up. She was like, I've never even thought of having somebody help out in the chat. And one of the designers that I moderate for, she was like, girl, I will not have a chat without a second person in there anymore.
Oh.
It's a second set of eyes to make sure something's not missed. It takes some of the stress off of everything. It's just, it works out for everybody a lot better. If there's makers out there, do it.
So if there's listeners here that they could even contact you through
Instagram, email, whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Even if it is our email, then it's, what is it? Knit, sleep, eat, edit, repeat, I think. Lisa's blog. There we go. Or catch me on Instagram.
I named it. Okay. It's knit, edit, sleep. No. Knit.
Knit. I know the full name is Knit, Design, Sleep, Edit, Repeat.
Knit, design, edit, sleep, repeat is what it is.
There we go.
But the email is knit, design, edit.
There you go. Shows you how often I actually look at it when I log in.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, especially if you're an extrovert who, you enjoy interaction and you want to help support your introverted friends, that'd be a great way to do it.
That's interesting. I think
because there's a lot of introverts out there that they are just terrified to get into a group chat.
Well,
and to run it is just, they're deathly terrified.
Wow. But it's also something that's not so time consuming or intensive, like you said.
Yeah. And you still get the fun of the social aspect. You get to see the project grow. You get to, still support all of your friends of that kind of thing. And
be a part,
Yeah. I do it as the editor because I've already looked at the pattern. I've already got, a pretty good understanding of what the pattern looks like and how it's supposed to run.
Right.
Can a general listener, general maker do it? Absolutely. You just have to make sure that you've got a good relationship with the designer where if you don't understand it, the designer can explain it to you where you can relay it back.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, cool.
I think it would work.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that's it. You got anything else? Any other thoughts?
I don't. No. And I wrote a couple of them down and I've already asked them.
I like it. Well, I have had fun this hour. It's been a fast hour. So
yeah,
I'm glad we were able to do this. So
okay.
If anybody has any questions about any of this, they can reach out to either one of us. And I know Lisa was looking forward to hearing us talk about this because she was like, I haven't ever tested, so this ought to be fun. And, I would love to hear some testers' input, whether it's on our Facebook group or at one of us independently or through the email. I would love to hear their input on whether they want to be a moderator or what their thoughts are on timelines or will you pay more for a pattern to be tech edited and tested? Or
on our Facebook group, I know we have I can't remember her name. I feel so horrible about that. We have somebody running our Facebook group now instead of me, and you can put a poll up.
Yeah.
So maybe we should have her do that.
Yeah, maybe one of us should pop something up there about that because I can't think of her name either. She's an amazing being for doing the Facebook group. Caitlin?
Yeah.
Catherine? I don't know. I'm so sorry. I'm awful.
No,
we're bad with names. We're great with faces. We're bad with names.
I was gonna say we have deficient noun disease. Okay, leave us alone.
Yeah, we've hit the time of day where we're done. So
I'm done.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I'd love to definitely hear thoughts on testing versus editing, and I think the last thing coming back around to it that we talked about earlier is having it listed on the front. Me personally, I would love that to become an industry standard where it is listed everywhere, whether it's been edited, tested, or both.
Yep.
You know, in the listing on the romancing page, in the IG posting, you know, the Facebook posting, everything. I think it needs to be listed everywhere.
Yep.
So that people, you know, the maker knows what they're getting into.
And most of the Ravelry ones where I've seen that it is listed, it's at the very bottom.
It is at very bottom.
In italics.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would love for it to be a little bit further up, maybe.
Yeah.
And especially on something like Ravelry or even, well, I guess Etsy would be a little bit different, or personal websites would be different. But I would love for it to be a check mark, especially on Ravelry and Ribbler and some, you know, Lovecraft and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Has this pattern been edited? Yes. Has this pattern been tested? Yes. I would love for it to be a checkbox somewhere up there where you know, and even a filterable option, like, you know, maybe that's a bit much because, you know, I'm actually,
well, but to me, it makes sense. It really does.
Yeah.
I believe in being transparent. So,
and to me, that also justifies the price, because if it is a more expensive pattern, why are you asking me to pay, you know, $12 for a scarf or a shawl? Oh, because you've had it tested and edited. Okay, let's go.
Yep.
You know, to me, you tell me that right off the top next to the price, all day long I'm in.
I'm good for it. Yep. No problem with it. Not at all. Yep.
All right, Miss Sparkle Coordinator, I think it's time to go.
Sweetie pie, yes,
I'm starting to get hungry, so I'm going to go find some food and I'm going to bed.
Get some sleep, and we'll talk later.
And you as well. And I will catch up with you later.
Okay, sweetie. Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
You can email us at knitdesignedit@gmail.com or reach out to our Facebook or Ravelry groups. And come back next time when Denise and Tiffany talk with Sarah LaRue of No Hooks Given. Sarah, I apologize if I have mispronounced your name. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you listen, and join the conversation in our Ravelry or Facebook groups. For show notes or knit tech editing and related services, please visit my website at arcticedits.com. To inquire about crochet tech editing and other services Tiffany provides, please go to wootcrafts.com.